Alrighty folks, I am ready to review this rod. The plan for the video is to show you the components of the rod as quickly as I can, and then I'll go sit on the couch for 5 minutes and tell you my opinion on how it fishes and what applications I think it's good for. Here is the cap of the rod. This rod, folks, is absolutely beautiful from end to end. Beautiful metallic accents all around the rod. Even if they are plastic, they do look metallic. Just look at this cork. And then here the print that is like, this doesn't look like paint. It looks like it's burnt into the wood. Absolutely beautiful. By the way, if you're wondering how does it hold the reel with just cork, it's not just cork. As a matter of fact, this core under the cork, this part I think is metallic. I mean, could be plastic, but it looks so shiny, and I don't know. I actually think that this part here is metallic. On the older models of this rod, this big chunk of cork here was actually ending right around here. And then you had a little bit of empty blank, not empty, but looked like here, and you had a little butt section. So in the newer models, they decided not to have empty blank here, but to extend the cork all the way back to the cap here, to the butt. And I have to say, I do like the little bit of extra support for this piece of my palm here. It was just touching the blank on the old rod, and I mean, it was a huge chunk of cork, but my hand was still touching the blank, and I find myself enjoying this extra real estate of cork here. Talking about new and old models, take a really good look at this model number here, because this is the only model in the entire lineup of new and old models that I personally recommend. These are the specs on the rod. I'll talk more about those later too. No hook keeper, of course, because God forbid we spend half a gram on a hook keeper. But I want to show you something with respect to this first spec here. 6'1", it says, is the length. But let me show you something which will make you appreciate it will put the weight of the rod in context, the extra cork in context. Let me just show you something first, and then we'll talk about it. If we align the reel seats of the two rods, look at the St. Croix. The St. Croix is 2 full inches longer on the back, but the St. Croix is 6'0". Okay, and this rod is 6'1". So if the St. Croix is 6'0" and sticks 2 inches behind, you can tell that in reality, this rod here, the DIPLOMAT, even though it's 6'1", will stick whole 3 inches in front of the St. Croix Legend Elite panfish. And it does if you align the rods by the reel seat, which you should, because that's where you're gonna hold it. So the practical fishing experience with this rod is, it actually feels like a longer rod, which I really appreciate, because it's very hard to find a long rod with good performance. Once they get over 6 feet, they all start to wobble, and all companies hate wobble, and that's why they keep them shorter. But this rod in reality feels like a 6'3". Here is some more graphics for you, just beautiful graphics. These are the accents of the rod. Should I do it now? All right, fine, let's do it. I said in my fishing videos that the rod that I like best The reel that I like best with this rod is the Cardiff, because the accents match and the color of the frame kind of looks very good with the blank of the rod. And I still think that this reel looks and feels amazing with this rod. But here in my office, I tried a bunch of other reels, and let me quickly show you here the cheap Daiwa Legalis. Looks pretty good to me with this rod and feels absolutely amazing. By the way, another side effect of this counterweight here is this rod feels amazing with all reels from 140 to 185 grams, probably even with 200. I haven't tried it with the Sahara, but it's just perfectly balanced, does not care about the weight of the reel. Then when you get to the first guide, you will see this graphic here for Abu Garcia's trademark. They say that these blanks are made of 100% carbon, not 99.9. I've seen rods with 99.9. No, they say they're made of 100% carbon. How do you make a 100% carbon blank flex? But I want to call your attention to the guide, because the first guide is another change from the older models. The old models, folks, if you can see, I can't turn it around because the St. Croix is a one-piece rod. But the old models had the exact same guide that you see on the St. Croix. First of all, it has only one arm on the frame here. And second of all, the color of the guide is gunmetal. Now we have not one, but two arms, and regrettably, the color of the arms is chrome now. The new guides are obviously stronger, having two arms. Obviously, they are heavier, and obviously, they are more rigid. So these are all objective characteristics. Now, the subjective part, they are stronger, could not care less. If you broke one of these guides, you are not gonna find any sympathy on my channel. Just be more careful. Who needs stronger guides on a $300 JDM rod? By the way, even though this rod is made in China, this is a JDM rod, but I'm not going in this discussion now. So do not care about stronger, but this is subjective. You might care. I'm providing both objective and subjective evaluation. Heavier, how much extra weight does this second arm here have? The arms are titanium. The ring is torzite. Titanium is very light. I don't know if we're saving even half a gram. The rod is already 64.5 grams. I really don't think the extra weight is a big deal either. The last thing, however, is a difference in rigidity, and I care greatly about that actually, because I've said it before, but I don't know if I ever showed you up close. All of these single arm guides, as much as I love them, one day if I make my own rod, I will use these guides, but these are the flimsiest, most flexible guides on the entire market. Just look at this. It doesn't take any force to bend these. And bending, okay, it's not gonna break, but if you care about sensitivity, bending absorbs, it absorbs something. It absorbs some kind of stress, and whatever it absorbs, you will not feel in your hand. The second guide is also with two arms, but the arms are so much shorter that if we're talking about weight savings, I don't think you can save even 0.1 gram of weight by removing one of the arms. So you just preservement. These things are rigid, folks. I think they can snap or break some of the epoxy here, but these things will not bend. The rest of the guides are the same as in the old rod. I will bring your attention to the inner diameter. The inner diameter of these guides is tiny. I am super zoomed in here. They are tiny, but they are about 1 millimeter larger than the inner diameter of the guides of the Eradicator. And this extra 1 millimeter of inner diameter, folks, makes all the difference for me. And finally, the top two guides have white tape, something which I believe carried over from their solid tip models, because solid tip models provide a visual indication. The detection of the bite happens not through feeling the physical vibration, but through visual indication. And that's why on the solid tip rods, they put this white tape. So when the tip bends from here, and it really bends from somewhere over here, when the tip bends, you can see the bite just by watching the white tape. And because they use the same tape and the same guides and the same colors on all of the models, the white tape carried over here, but this is a tubular tip. It doesn't flex here. It flexes all the way down here. So there is no point watching the white tape on the tubular tip models. Okay. The action of this rod of this specific model, and you have to be careful with the models, but the action of this specific model that I am reviewing is regular fast. Regular fast means beautiful bend in the top half of the rod and kind of stiffish first half of the rod, which is what people call backbone. But the reason I said you have to be careful with the models, because all of the older models of this rod used to have solid tip here in the first 3, maybe 4 guides, somewhere up to here. And the solid tip models of this rod, the tip used to bend like a hook. So this rod no more bends like a hook, no more extra fast action. I said in my videos the first half is kind of stiff, doesn't bend at all. Now for the video I'm playing with the rod, and let me tell you, it doesn't take very much to flex the first half of the rod either. You just know the way I fish with 2-pound line and very soft drag, I just can't put enough force to flex the first half. But if you are one of these folks that do ultralight fishing with braid, with the 8-pound braid, I know you guys cinch the drag a lot more than I do. You will definitely, if that's how you fish, flex the first half of the rod too. When you combine this kind of action with 100% carbon blank, you can imagine that you end up with a rod with just laser sharp tip. This rod is easily with the sharpest tip of any rod I currently own. The only rods that I have fished with a tip that is just as sharp is these exotic prototype rods like Corto prototype, Belleza prototype, Barbatus prototype. But those are, first of all, more expensive rods. Second of all, they're kind of exotic and impractical. Some of them didn't have a reel seat. They had like just literally two plastic nuts that are holding the reel. So nothing like this here. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent, but to have a rod this beautiful and this comfortable with a tip this sharp, I don't know of another rod that offers that. So extremely sharp tip. The other thing that happens when you combine 100% carbon blank with titanium guides, with torzite inserts, and on top of that you put guides with 2 arms that don't flex at all. But when you have such lightweight and rigid guides combined with such a blank, you can imagine that you're going to end up with extremely sensitive rod. And I have to repeat the exact same thing I just said about the sharp tip. This rod is easily the most sensitive rod of all of the rods I currently own, and I own some nice rods, folks. Eradicator has the same blank, but the Eradicator has more flex here everywhere. The Eradicator has a little bit of wobble. Also, the Eradicator has these super flexy guides. This rod is just, the action is a little bit stiffer than the Eradicator. The guides are a little bit stiffer. It's a more sensitive rod than the Eradicator. As far as twitch specialist, again, of all of the rods that I own currently, this is by far the best twitch specialist. On top of this rod being extremely sharp and extremely sensitive, I mean, look how much grip we have. Where are you gonna find a rod with this kind of performance to have this much real estate for your hands? And then, for those of you who are a little bit older and appreciate the retro looks, I know I have a lot of older subscribers that will absolutely love the look of this rod on the wall. They're gonna love it if it's leaning on a rack somewhere on your boat. It's just a gorgeous rod. Now, if I have to find something to criticize, these guides, chrome color, I personally don't like chrome color, but why does Fuji even make a chrome color guide? Because people like them. Some of you like chrome. As far as aesthetics go, I much prefer a single arm guide. They look more elegant to me. But if you have a single arm guide, I understand what's going to happen. It's going to introduce flex in the guide. So you have to decide, what do you want? Do you want a rod that's elegant? Or do you want a rod that's sensitive? With respect to weight, a rod with this kind of blank, with this kind of guides, and this kind of price, this rod is 64.5 grams, and to be honest with you, it weighs about 10 grams more than what I expect such a rod to weigh. But let me tell you, fishing back to back with this rod and the Presso Air AGS, which weighs 20 grams less, I never once switched between the two rods and thought, oh, this one is heavier. And you know what? If you have to feel on the boat which rod is heavier, you might even say that the Presso Air AGS is heavier, especially the 6'1" medium light that has a little bit tip heavy, a little bit of wobble. From that rod, you grab this one, all of a sudden, the tip is so light. The tip is so sharp. So that there is no way you're going to tell me, oh, well, this feels heavier. The weight of this rod is completely invisible. If anything, these extra 10 grams allow for some unique dimensions of the rod, allow you to have a rod that, the length of this rod is, like I mentioned, 6'1". But if you think of how much a rod, once you grab the rod with the reel, how much rod do you have in front of you? Because you're casting, you're fighting the fish with what is in front of you. What is behind is just for balancing. But Because we have 10 extra grams here, you can move the reel seat back towards the end of the rod. So now look how close the reel seat is to the end of the rod. This rod is 6'1", but all of the length is in front of you and fishable. So I did the math, comparing it with my St. Croix Legend Elite Panfish, and the length of the rod in front of you is comparable to 6'3". But it's very difficult to find a 6'3" rod with such sharp tip. Not to mention, I love having short back sections here. Because look at this, you can tell. Imagine you're holding the jig or whatever, you like backhand just lobbing. They call it pitching in bass. But I lob a lot. I don't hold the jig, but I lob a lot when I'm close to the bank. I mean, this short section here makes the rod so much comfortable. It doesn't grab your clothes. I don't have to tell you. Rods with very long sections here, they keep grabbing your elbow. They're just not as maneuverable. So this extra weight here does not bother me at all. The last thing that, if I have to criticize something, is why is the first half of the rod so stiff? It's not even stiff, folks. It's not even stiff. Now, my personal preferences are, I'm so much biased towards, I just want soft. I'm willing to tolerate wobble. I'm willing to tolerate loss of sensitivity. I will personally tolerate pretty much everything, just so when I fight the fish, the whole rod bends. But not everybody will tolerate wobble. You know, when you're buying a $300 Japanese rod and you shake it like this and it wobbles even a little bit, people put it down. So even the action of the rod, this part here being too stiff, I told you, objectively, if you cinch up the drag a little bit more and load, put some more weight on the blank, it will flex more. And then even if you made the first half softer, that would probably introduce wobble in the tip of the rod that you wouldn't like. So I think most people, the vast majority of people, probably, I don't know, 80% of the people of all anglers would probably much prefer the action just the way it is compared to the perfect action for me, like what is on the Eradicator or the 6'1" medium light Presso Air AGS. Both of those rods, if you shake them, they take a little second to recover over there. But I went on too many tangents again, but I will repeat my summary, which I started when I sat on the couch here. This rod, folks, is an amazing twitch specialist with plenty of grip for large hands and just beautiful retro looks. If you are looking for a product with this kind of description, you have to at least check this rod out.